So good afternoon, everybody. I'm Sarah Greenwood, and on behalf of the MGAA, I'd like to welcome you to our briefing this afternoon, which is being delivered by AXA Insurance. Before I hand over to our presenters, I'd just like to run through a couple of housekeeping points. Can you please just make sure that your microphone and camera are switched off throughout the market briefing? If you'd like to ask a question, can you use the chat button at the bottom of your screen? These will remain anonymous. We can ask them at the Q&A session at the end of the briefing. If we don't have time, there may be the opportunity for them to be asked afterwards if you do want to leave your contact details. The MGA's Programme of Learning and Insights has been accredited by the Chartered Insurance Institute for the quality of content and supporting materials, with CPD hours applicable if relevant to your ongoing professional development. The recording of this briefing will be available on our website and MGA YouTube channel, with the PowerPoint presentation to follow post-event. Finally, you'll be sent a feedback survey. Please do take the time to fill this in. It shouldn't take more than a couple of minutes, and it does allow us to deliver the best quality events to our members. So today's briefing is Take Steps to a Greener Future, introducing AXA Climate School, is being delivered by Joel Markham, Head of Schemes, Sales, Marketing and Operations for AXA Commercial, and Douglas Barnett, Director, Mid-Market and Customer Risk Management for AXA Insurance. Douglas has been involved in the delivery of risk management in the insurance industry for more than 35 years in the UK and across mainland Europe. He has been involved in the development of AXA's mid-market proposition, Vantage, since 2015, and took over responsibility for the segment in addition to his risk management role in 2017. He has represented AXA Insurance on a number of technical groups of the ABI and presented ABI at regulatory and governmental bodies on flood and climate change, economic cost of fire, modern methods of construction and crime. Joel joined AXA in 2020 with his role incorporating the management of operational teams, schemes, relationships and new deals implementation. Joel has 20 years experience in the GI personal and commercial lines market and has worked at Allianz, Zurich and Aegis. Before I hand over to Joel, we do have an opening question to get you all thinking. You can add any responses in the chat as mentioned before. And that question is, what's your biggest challenge around climate change with your clients? So that's it for me for now. Joel, it's over to you.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for having us. So just to set the scene before we kind of go into the main content, we always think it's quite helpful just to set what should you expect? What do we hope that you get out of attending one of these sessions and investing the time? So what we hope is four key things, really. We hope that you'll be able to describe the roles and responsibilities of MJs and insurers and risk managers in the current climate landscape. We'll be able to explain the specific impact of climate change on the risk management and insurance sector, outline moving from the emergency to act to actually act to the opportunity to act, and explain how the AXA Climate School can enable understanding and learning of climate action, which obviously with everything going on in America at the moment in time is very, very apt. So just to start off with, AXA Commercial is extremely proud to be a long-standing partner of the MGAA. We are the sole platinum sponsor of the Managing General Agents Association, and have sponsored, you would have seen us popped up at many of the market facing events, and we've done about 3 or 4 of these webinars, and it's a really important part of our schemes and MGA journey that we are working with the MGAA, providing thought leadership and building out deeper relationships with an industry body, but also with yourselves. And obviously you've got AXA Excel, who are deep within the delegated authority market as well, and also sponsor and work with the MGAA on their next generation group, bringing new talent through. So AXA is very, very committed to the MGA market, the schemes market, and hopefully you'll get a lot out of today. Dougie, over to you.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks, Joel. You already mentioned what a day to be presenting a session like this. Now, all over our TV screens. I'm sure some of you have been looking at US where you've got exposures, etc., and how extreme climate events can impact communities, people, but as insurers and MGAs, profitability, capacity, and future strategy. Now, if you look at Florida today, But what I would say, if you like to watch weather and what happens across the globe at things, it's not just extreme events like we're looking at in Florida today on our laptops or our TVs or whatever. If you look over the last 2 or 3 months, there's been horrific floods right across mainland Europe, be that from Germany, Poland, and various other countries, where you're seeing houses washed away, communities horrifically impacted. So I think what you see particularly large floodwaters sweeping through towns, villages, etc. for one day, but what you don't see is the devastating impact it has on individuals for many months or actually years. And it's something that people ask me about climate change insurance. Is it important? Who should be involved in it? Why do we need to know about it? For me, MD working in insurance, and be that P&C, health, or whatever avenue, climate change will impact everyone in insurance's results over decades to come. And it's already happening today. And I think if you think back 20 years, just to how things you witnessed around you. Now, how many times did you used to have snow and you no longer get snow? Or when you get snow, is it lighter falls or heavier falls? We used to think flood was mainly across the winter period. Flood's now a 12-month issue. And quite often the more devastating floods can actually happen during the summer with severe flash floods, etc. in the UK. So for me, climate change and understanding climate change is really important for anyone working in insurance today and going forward. What else? Why does it impact us? One, impacts how we talk to our customers, how we understand our customers' risks. But what should we be offering our customers in the way of policy wordings, policy coverage, or added solution to protect a business as it expands, grows, or sometimes just tries to survive? There's many things we've got to look at. Climate in the UK, if we look at governmental, comes in and out the news regularly. And I think an ideal example of that is what's happening with EV vehicles. So if you look at the transition away from petrol and diesel vehicles, the government wanted to push that. So what did they do? They changed the tax regime for businesses and company car drivers to encourage the use of EVs and introduction of EVs. And we saw that fairly rapidly. We saw that happening. We saw that transition for company car drivers. But what they hadn't planned was, how do the UK infrastructure support that? So we had lack of charging, with lots of issues that came very quickly, which has now actually been resolved to a large extent when you're seeing very fast chargers now installed up and down motorways within strategic points, etc. And then you have a change of government, or you get government coming under pressure and they look to change policy. But behind that, might change local policy, but there's other policy globally where, particularly through Europe, where car manufacturers will now be fined if they don't sell enough EV vehicles. So manufacturers are trying to push more EVs through. But it is a challenge as government policy chops and changes, and what is the right. And we'll come back to some of that later. One thing I'd like to say is my feeling is climate change quite often scares people. Quite often it's viewed as a subject for scientists, a subject for people that are really embedded in this subject. But it's not. It's really for us all. And there's one example I would use as to where I see climate change knowledge starting to change. And that's particularly through education, particularly through kids. And I think now, those always on calls with kids just now, kids are really interested in what's happening to the planet, what's happening around them, and how their impacts can actually impact that and change that. I know we at AXA, we did recent interns and I've done apprentices. And when you bring the kids or young adults into our business, they're really interested in ESG, they're interested in climate, but they want to actually know what do you actually do about it? It's not just about words. They actually want to witness it and be part of that journey. And for the future, actually attracting staff and retaining staff, something like climate is really important. Now, to show how a business is actually on the front foot, understands that how we're looking to help our customers, how we're hoping to now help our brokers and MGAs, etc., with the knowledge we can help. But that must be done in an understandable fashion. An example I would go from a number of years ago from my kids was, a number of years ago, recycling wasn't sexy. Nobody did recycling. Nobody was interested. But the pressure from recycling in the household came from kids. And as councils and local authorities started to push recycling through communities, it was the kids that actually the bigger influence in changing opinions of their parents and their families, etc. And that's starting to happen with climate change, whereby there's a real interest there, and they want to make sure they understand about what can they do, and they'll actually walk away from employers where they feel aren't appropriate, don't have the right policies, and they can't evidence action's been taken. So that's really just a bit of a scene setter from me. So what about AXA? We're now one of the largest insurers in the world, if not largest. So what would we do? And I'd say we've been in the journey over a number of years now, and particularly since our current CEO and global CEO, Thomas Burwell, took over, who's very passionate about climate and how it impacts people, but how we can actually be at the forefront of helping people understand of what it is. So one thing we did is Thomas Burwell himself, we set up a business in Paris called AXA Climate. So AXA Climate School is produced through the AXA Climate team, which is scientists, actuaries, risk engineers. There's a lot of skills in that AXA Climate business in Paris. And one of the things they were challenged to do was come up with a learning modules for AXA staff. We've got 140,000 staff worldwide. And AXA Climate came up with a 10-module program that it was decided that from Thomas himself pushed down to all these global CEOs to say, this is such an important topic, all AXA staff must complete this program. And that didn't matter where you were employed or what your job was in AXA. Every single person in AXA globally have to complete this 10-module program. In AXA Insurance, where I sit and Joel sits, we've got a 98.5% completion just now with all our staff. And quite often you'll find staff go in looking at 8 or 10 modules and go, do I really know this? Most people I've talked to, they've always got something out of it. Now they've learned something, they like the way we put it over. And there's definitely been a change within AXA about how people think and people talk about climate and understand AXA's passion for that. And what we've done out of the AXA Climate School AXA staff have done, we've taken initially 4 modules out the 10 modules that AXA staff do. And what we've done is we started to offer that to brokers and customers, and we're offering that to all MGA association members and your customers also at no cost. Very short modules which will come on and describe. The actual production quality is fantastic. You think of quite often insurance company material being quite dry, quite boring sometimes. I can assure you this isn't. This is really interactive, gets you into it. It'll test you, but I'll also give you some thinking points from that, which I think is really important when we're doing something like this. And it is free. It's really easy to register, which I'll come on to later. But it's something that we've proven with an AXA, our staff really bought into it. In the short period we've offered it to some brokers, we've now got around about 700 brokers registered for it and now using it. For me, this is part of the journey. There's much more AXA do. This is the first step, and one to get you comfortable with the subject about climate, but also to get you thinking about how it can impact your business or is there a advantage here in how you can talk to customers and start advising customers? Joel, can I ask you to go to the next slide, please? And after this webinar, so we're talking Climate School today, but there's much more that AXA can provide or support you with as an individual MGAs. If you want to take this further to your staff, so it's free of charge, it's really easy to register. But our marketing team have come up with some really good collateral that, again, we can provide to you if you wish to use that for either your staff or customers or whatever. It's all there free of charge, and that's from, we've got a taster video which we'll run later. We've got various desktop wallpapers, we've got introductory PDFs, we've got posters, email footers. There's lots of things there that we can make available. And again, if you wanted to self-brand, etc., white label, I'm sure we can get that done as well. There's a number of other things. So I've done 2 separate video conferences with colleagues from AXA Climate. They're available on there if you wish to look at these. But AXA Group, annually we do a future risk report and also a foresight report. The future risk report is due out in the next 2 weeks. And that looks at climate is a huge part of that, but what else? What other risks in the world are there? Where do we look at it? There's thousands of independent experts we actually talk to and survey about this for this report every year. So it's stacked full of really insightful information. Next slide, please, Joel. So what is AXA Climate School? One, it's an online experience. It's online learning. It's completely free, and registration is really quick and simple. It's first name, last name, email address. That's all you require to get going. Next slide, Joe. And so we've done 4 bite-sized training modules, various videos in there. There's quizzes, but we also check knowledge. But the other thing, really to help with CPD, etc., is to make sure for each module you can download a certificate of completion at the end of each module. So you've got that to assist with your CPD and really to let you understand what's actually been done, etc. So that's all within the package. Joe? So to understand, just going to touch on this. There's the 4 different modules. So really to understand, what we've done is we put a module in there we call the Great Climate System. And that's really about what is climate change. And it's taken away from the really intense scientific discussions and governmental type discussions to explain in easy steps what is climate change. So that you could pick that up, talk to colleagues. One thing we'll find, I know our staff have found, is talking to their own kids about it, and a number of our staff have actually put their own kids through this module because the children have actually enjoyed it by talking to the parents and actually seeing the quality of the material that's produced in the videos, etc. It is immersive. It pulls people into it, so it can get debate in the family, but also I hope what it does, it gives you confidence to have discussions. You won't know everything about climate change. It's a huge subject. But it's making sure people get on that journey and start understanding it, start exploring it a bit more, and asking questions. It could be to me, to be AXA. It could be just how can we help this with your customers or your business. The second module is around overexploitation of natural resources. And that's really to pull together, right? So what else happens this with now climate change? It's things like deforestation, fossil fuel extractions, the issue with water globally. Water is the most precious resource we've got on this planet, and it's one of the most vulnerable assets we have. But also goes into like greenhouse gas emissions. So talk about greenhouse gas emissions, etc. An industry like construction, so if you've got a large construction book, what impact do they have? Now, things like, if you look at construction, they require metals, sands, timber, 3 basic components of most big construction projects. That's all natural resources. Every time we use a natural resource, you've got some form of impact on the planet, and some great work going on within construction sector that now we as AXA are involved with. Now looking at how that can improve, how construction companies can look at that, etc. But natural resources is really important. And yes, now it can obviously include things like agricultural production and how the way our farmers, agriculture system, how do they work and what impact can they actually have through fertilizers, nitrogen, methane. There's lots of different things. And you'll start hearing people talk about, well, I can't eat beef because it's going to damage the planet, etc. There are things in there about now everything about natural resources and why that's a major threat to the planet, etc. Joel, next slide. Another one we want to put in was really about ACT, and this is a question a lot of people ask about. It's too complicated to think of what can my small business or me as an individual do or my family do as an individual. So we thought it was important to start that journey for you. So giving you information about what is your company's carbon footprint, how can you act on it, and it might be really small steps. And there's lots of different things. We talked about vehicles already. If you're running vehicles, what type of vehicle you're running, but how you're supporting your staff. Now you've got cycle to work schemes and all that kind of good thing that you can look at. But also looking at your suppliers. So how do you procure products, services, and make sure that's been done properly? Now you're looking at energy you consume as a business, etc. So really just looking at how does your company impact on climate? But I think the one I really like and one we had put in is everyone kind of says, well, what can I do? I'm one person on this planet. And I think that is, there are steps everyone can do. And I think it's that understanding, but taking that through your family and just being a bit more aware of what you're actually doing. And a lot of this can actually save money. People talk about the green agenda and always costing money. Yes, there's some areas where it could cost more money because you've got to change assets or put investment in. But at the same time, by doing things differently, you can actually save money. And by saving money, you can turn down the amount of carbon you're actually utilising, etc. There's lots of simple things in there that lets you see as an individual what you can actually do. So that's the 4 modules. It's a very high-level overview. Joe, next slide, please. Put this slide in, and this kind of lets you see, we talk about climate, we talk about ESG. Put this slide in as some of the things we in AXA Commercial have delivered, what we're looking at, what our future goals are. And we thought it'd just be interesting to let you see. So we have, over the last 4 or 5 years, had a lot of engagement with the UK government, looking at sustainability. So things like future planning, and a lot of the work AXA did, and we talked to both the previous government and the current government. We were talking to Labour when they were in opposition, and a number of the things that AXA and we talked to Labour about are now, they were in the initial manifesto of Labour and are now coming through, because you're looking at a huge amount of housing going to be built in the UK, talking 1.5 million new houses. That's a huge impact for insurers. So a lot of that housing will either be green belt or urban, where we could see increased surface water flooding or increased flooding. Are the materials appropriate? And things like that. But also, it's not just about EV chargers. We're already looking at hydrogen. You'll see Toyota on the TV talk about hydrogen vehicles. Hydrogen vehicles are here today. I would see hydrogen vehicles being much more for commercial business. I don't think they'll come down into the kind of individual, if you own a car, will be hydrogen, unlikely. I think businesses will go for hydrogen, and there's reasons for that. So I think as an MGA, an insurer, we've got to be wise to that, to be ready to talk to our customers about the benefits, the challenges, and how they can actually move towards that. So there's lots in there that we've actually been looking at. And it's not all about property. We look at supply chain, but looking at things like casualty. How does climate impact people? And there's a big impact there for people. If you look at the different extremes of temperature. So temperature's leveling out a bit, but you get more extremes at different times. If you may take construction or other outdoor workers, we know when you start looking at other countries, things like skin cancers are definitely an issue for people who now working in the open in a lot of time. And we've seen it's not uncommon now to see sunblock, sun creams on construction sites, even in the UK. So you may well be macho construction workers. There's a lot of work going into the construction sector to make people aware of the risks to them through weather. And there's a lot of talk about heat extremes, as in hot temperatures, but there's also working outside in cold extremes. And there's a number of issues that can impact the body through working in extreme cold regularly, etc. So if you look at that, if you look at all your customers, where they can actually be open to, etc., there's different discussion about that. And that all really comes under climate and a bit of ESG also. Future goals, looking at it, climate and ESG, our view is that businesses that have a good ESG policy, good climate policies, they actually understand about the business. And what I see going forward is you'll be able to identify these businesses, and they'll be businesses where I would look to be putting much more competitive terms down on. So I think any business can understand their business and react to future risks, particularly, they're much more attractive to insurers, MGAs in the future if you're looking at profitability and what kind of customer you want to engage with. And there should be rewards there for customers that are doing that. And I think it's important. It's not all about premium, but what else can we bring to these customers to actually encourage them and thank them for what they're doing, but helping them on their journey. Next slide, John. We're going to run this. This is an intro video. We hope it works okay for you. The sound might be a bit dodgy, but once you get slide pack, you'll be able to run this. So Joel, can I just ask you to run this and see how it runs? Unfortunately, obviously, you realise the sound didn't work there. Once we send the pack through, there will be a link in the pack to actually run that video, hopefully with the sound on your own end. This is something now, the actual video is really just an intro. If you see the QR code in the front there, if you put your phone to that, that's a QR code that takes you straight into the registration part of the system. So you don't actually need URLs or anything like that. You can go straight in through the QR code on there if you wish. Apologies for not having the sound there. I think it's just an issue between us and Zoom technology. Next slide, Joe. So Joe, now this is one really I've asked you to come back in here now just to see, have we actually covered the learning objectives? Do you feel, is there anything you feel we should cover before we move to questions?
So hopefully I can put the slides back up. I'll keep them like this so I don't disappear again. But no, I think so, Dougie. I think the one thing I would probably build on, which was definitely in your intro, which is these modules are extremely eye-opening. As just a human parent, dad, whatever, but actually applying it to your day-to-day, I think one of the things that has stuck with me is that every email that you send generates 10 grams of CO2 because it's got to go through all the servers. You think about the insurance industry and our desire for audit trails and emails and various things everywhere, right? So it for me was a bit of a wake-up call. So all I would say is there isn't just what an old school learning approach. There's some fantastic things in there. And I think the big thing for me, for all of you and also all of the MGAA members who haven't managed to make it today, but will receive the email version, is this isn't just for you. It's for your staff. It's for your brokers. AXA's passionate about this and we want to spread the word. So yes, this is part of our proposition. Yes, it's part of our proposition as platinum sponsor of the MGAA, but please do use this. Please do get it out there and use the modules. No, I think we've covered off the key things that we wanted to do, Dougie, and give a really good, robust intro. I'm not sure if there are any questions. I haven't been able to see the chat, or if anybody does have a question that they want to ask at this stage.
Yeah, which sectors are at most risk from climate change? But I think you kind of went into that quite a bit when you were going through your slides. Any people in construction, agriculture, anybody's working outside, and all of that is quite illuminating, as you've mentioned. We didn't looking in the chat. Everybody's been very shy, and we haven't had any responses to the opening question around biggest challenges on climate change with your clients. Maybe if we put that question to you, both of you, how would you respond to that?
I think climate change is one thing that people don't understand and are scared about. And I think it's something that people have got to start. Everyone's got to understand today, because it'll impact results tomorrow, which will impact profitability or impact bonuses to everyone working in insurance. Because if now your business isn't profitable, it'll impact what rewards you'll get, etc. It's also, when you look at sectors, just going back now, we talk about construction, talk about farming, real estate's a really big one, really big area, because you've got real estate owners looking to the future and looking about how properties could be blighted. So if you look at changes to building regulations, you look at investment, a lot of investors will now buy only buildings which are got a certain level of green credentials. That will increase. And one thing we've got as a group, we've got a tool called AXA Altitude, which we'll be coming to UK market with. And if anybody's interested, please contact me direct. But we can now take a portfolio of risk in the UK and across the globe and show out to 2050, 2060, how climate will actually impact on these individual buildings, and what a real estate owner, a building owner, can actually start doing today. Sorry about the dog if you hear that. So it's not just about today. We as a business, we're starting to look at really interesting tools, and we can now offer that now to brokers, to MGA association members, etc. If you're interested, really taking it to that next step where we're using AXA's global power, and we've been developing these tools.
And I'd add, Dougie, because it's I must admit I only came across the altitude tool this year, and it's helped us win clients because we've been able to answer questions that are sat on their exec boardroom paper, like what are the risks to our business? Well, actually, we can help visualize some of that, and not slowly, right? It doesn't take months. It's quick, and I think it's sometimes, to Dougie's point earlier, people haven't necessarily rationalized the risk of climate change to different parts of their business and whatever that could be in the future. But all I'd say is we AXA run globally a future risks report, and climate change has been the number one for many years, and the 2024 report is imminent. And just to put that into context, right? So the global top 10, I won't read them all out, and we can share the links to the previous reports. Was climate change was first, then cyber, and then geopolitical instability, and then AI and data. So if you think about all of the conversations about the other three, second, third, and fourth, the detail that is going into them, the conversations, I would argue that there's not as much actually happening, and the conversations happening in real terms to risks to businesses on the climate change one, and that has been number one for years. And that's an opportunity, right, for us as risk professionals, the insurance sector, to step into and help our clients through AXA, through MGA. So I know, but you can probably tell Dougie and I are very passionate about this thing, as are AXA as a business. There's a lot that we are trying to do, and selfishly, a bit of a plug, that's why we do MGAs. You bring expertise and skills to the table that we can't, but we then bring the power of AXA with all this other stuff that you're not going to get from other capacity providers. That's why we feel that we're good at capacity management. But there's a lot of tools out there, but we'll make sure we share the links to the future risk reports as well as the climate school stuff, because it's a good read, actually. It's quite educational.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's, as you mentioned in your intro, it's kind of everybody's responsibility really to start kind of taking action because as you mentioned, it's not just today's extreme weather events that are happening in Florida and around the Gulf of Mexico. It's kind of ongoing now. There seems to be something every week, if not every day, in some region of the world. So yeah, everybody does need to take responsibility. You're absolutely right. Just following on from that, there was another pre-question which was sent in, which might follow on just from what you've both been saying. So what do you think is the balance between mitigation and adaptation in terms of what you're proposing?
I think there's a real kind of 50-50 balance here. Now, uh, there's a bit of understanding first. So where do you go first with the two? There's one about strategy for businesses to say, right, where do they want to go? And then build out from there over a 3-year, 5-year, 10-year type plan, what they're committing to. Because there's definitely bits about knowledge. There's bits about investment, and that can be investment and de-investment. And then sometimes now things like mitigation and transition might be just to sell assets. It's not all about, you might not always be able to improve something. You might have to exit. And by exiting early, you might be ahead of your competition. Uh, that's probably where I'd put it. I think every business will be different. I don't think there's a one bit fits all here with a certain percentage or certain aspects to it. I think there's taking it in the round, understanding it, and then making what's the right judgment for your business. Or if you're talking to customers, there's a way of guiding customers, but in the end, because there's different commitments they need, I think it's guiding the customer to see where they feel comfortable. My worry about climate change sometimes is it comes down as a big stick. You must do because, and you're made to feel I've got to do that, and I'm really uncomfortable, so I'm not doing anything. So there's that definite journey of talking about it differently and understanding where whoever you're talking to, where's their appetite just now. And that discussion might be over a 2-year, 3-year period or longer. And I think it will change during that period, but having the discussion and being open and not having that rigid, you've got to do this because you've been really bad type attitude. And sometimes insurers can come over that way, I think, that this is what we are telling you, you must do it because we are telling you. And there's nothing else behind that, it's just because we are telling you to do it. So I think it's really important to have these open discussions and understanding where a business wish, need, or strategy wants to go. Joe?
I completely agree. You're definitely more closer to a lot of the client stuff and more of an expert in this. But I think the one thing there for me is it's getting the balance right of commercial advantage and using the knowledge to run your business, whilst also making sure that we step up as an industry for whatever the customers' needs are going to be. But that's not just an insurance play, right? That's a reinsurance play. That's an entire sector industry conversation, and it's also not just a UK one because of the impact of what is happening in the US will have an impact on UK pricing next year, right? It's all connected, and that's reality because a lot of the UK are going to have US reinsurers, or will have UK businesses that have US reinsurance arms and property cat businesses that are going to step in and put things right for customers. But it's going to be costly, right? And we will feel that in the UK through our reinsurance costs because it's all got to balance somehow. And it might not be immediately next year because the cost might not be clear, but it definitely will be into 25, 26 and 27 if these continue. Other costs will just inherently increase, or insurers have to take on more risk. And that puts more risk on balance sheets for not only for us, but also our expectations of our MGA partners as well. It's never in someone else's backyard. The industry is so interconnected. We've got to think about it as kind of not an ecosystem, but broadly it is, right? It is all interconnected. So we need to keep an eye on all of that stuff. But education is the best way to start.
Sure. Sarah, can I just add one thing that I haven't actually talked about yet? It's interesting because the FCA came out with new greenwash regulations in the 31st of May of this year, which will really bite. And it is what they're looking to do is get hold of things quickly. Now, really to make sure that the insurance sector are now developing sustainable products and services, but they're accurately described to protect the customer. So I think up to now you've seen various claims about if you do this, this will help, blah, blah, blah. The new FCA regulations came in the 31st of May. And I think, particularly for insurers, but again, MGAs, if you're talking to brokers and you're looking at products, etc., you're going to have to be careful about being able to justify what your claims are. And I think that goes across a wide area of, specifically on the climate area and greenwash. So I think that's something people have got, now everyone's got to be aware of, that there is the new regulations. We're aware the FCA are looking closely at what's said out there to make sure people can justify what they're saying. In a way, that's where, and actually we're lucky in a way because we've got a separate business, AXA Climate, with fantastic resource and knowledge. But going down to all through your different products, even saying we're not, now the product's digital only to save the planet, we're not printing documents. Can you actually justify that? So what is the saving? Because yes, digital products are digital, but as Joel talked about, using data centres and all sorts of things comes into this. And there's now people, consultants and other pressure groups out there challenging things like that, where people are saying, we don't print paper, we're helping save the planet. We have now seen organisations, pressure groups challenging to say, right, give us your research, tell us the research report that actually makes a difference. So we're in an interesting position just now, and with the added FCA regulations 31st of May, if anybody's interested, send you a link to a couple of paragraphs in there. But it's just being ahead of the market, being careful what you say and being able to justify it. And again, saying we can change your business by 2050 because we do X, Y, and Z. There will be a requirement there to be able to justify what you're saying, which will be interesting to see how the different market players react to that.
I think you're right. It's not just about empty promises, is it? You have to have the backup to support that, and it's good that the FCA are coming out with regulations. I don't know how prepared everybody's going to be for that, but they've got notice, so hopefully they would adhere and get on with it. But we haven't got any other questions in the chat, so if everybody's happy, I just want to thank both Joel and Dougie for taking time out today to go through introducing AXA Climate School to climate school to us. It's been really insightful, and people should absolutely take advantage of the resources that are on offer. So just before we finish, I'd like to remind you to take our feedback survey, and if you're not already registered, please do join us at the MGA Claims event on the 7th of November at the QE2 Centre. And further details on that can be found on the MGA website. But other than that, thanks again to Dougie and Joel, and thank you all for joining us, and have a lovely afternoon.